Fear Collective, thanks so much for joining me. Today we're getting into the scares and subtext of 2020's The Dark and the Wicked. The Dark and the Wicked is a 2020 release about a family who comes together to aid their dying father, centering on the adult siblings Louise and Michael. If you're a fan of slow burn, atmospheric horror that focuses on relationships as much as it does the scares, The Dark and the Wicked is definitely worth checking out. The film is written and directed by Brian Bertino, best known for writing and directing The Strangers, and it totally shows because The Dark and the Wicked is just as brooding and moody and nihilistic. But while I would consider The Strangers more of a slasher, The Dark and the Wicked feels a lot more paranormal oriented. The film is heavy on jump scares, some of which become repetitive. There's a sound effect that's used as a jump scare. I counted 4 different times throughout the film, and while it did scare me, I wonder how well it will hold up on repeat viewings because I was already kind of over it by the end of the movie, just having experienced it so many times. The film also commits what I consider to be a cardinal sin in horror by attempting to use a ringing telephone as a jump scare. Lazy. I remember hearing, I believe on the Evolution of Horror podcast, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way, and you should totally check it out if you haven't already, the concept of quiet, quiet bang, or something like that. Essentially, it's when a horror film is really quiet and a lot of the dialogue is purposely sort of whispered and hush-hush, only to be disrupted by a startling sound effect that's meant to act as a jump scare. The Dark and the Wicked does this a lot, to the extent that even the title card in the opening sequence is used as a jump scare of sorts. Now, I was watching this film with super high volume, so these types of scares did work for me, but if you're someone who doesn't appreciate that trope, you might have a hard time with this film. So one thing that I want to start doing with these film reviews is highlighting what I find to be the scariest sequence. Now, the scariest sequence in The Dark and the Wicked happens to be the scariest sequence that I've seen in any horror film, probably in the last 10 years. It's a sequence wherein Michael, the brother character, is woken up in the night, as does happen in horror films, and experiences some scares that are so simplistic, yet feel so grounded in reality. It's totally the type of thing that you can see happening in real life, and that's what made it so effective for me. Now, a character being awoken in the night by paranormal stuff isn't necessarily a new trope. It basically happens in every haunted house movie ever. But I'd like to compare this sequence with something like The Conjuring, where the young girl wakes up in the night to see a demon ghost lady hunched on the top of her wardrobe. That Conjuring sequence scared me a lot when I first saw the film because it was startling and it served as a really effective jump scare. But The Dark and the Wicked proves that you don't necessarily need a demon ghost lady in your room to have a really potent tension and dread that makes the scene. And as I said, what Michael experiences is so simple, it totally feels like it can happen to you, and that's what makes it so disturbing. My biggest takeaway from the subtext of this film is that it's about a fractured family unit coming together when it's really too late. I think that this is a really popular trend in horror right now, with films like Hereditary and Relic executing these themes in really poignant ways. And while ultimately I don't feel like The Dark and the Wicked adds much to that narrative, it mostly feels like a moody scare factory wherein the main objective is to just startle and surprise you with as many quiet bang moments as possible. I'm going to rate my overall enjoyment of The Dark and the Wicked a 7 out of 10, although I'm not confident that it will be as enjoyable upon rewatch, given that this film relies so heavily on jump scares. It's available for rental now, but it will be streaming on Shudder sometime soon. And as I said, it does provide some really effective moments of tension and downright fear, so I say check it out, and I will check you out in the next video.